So this is a different sort of video, a more practical one, in which I'm going to be talking about what I eat in a day as a carnivore, or a 95% carnivore, as someone who is a chronically ill patient and trying to improve from ME-CFS, that's myalgic encephalomyelitis, also known as chronic fatigue syndrome, a condition very similar to POTS or to long COVID. And I've done a previous video about how I have found the carnivore diet so far and the various benefits that it has given me, and those benefits have continued in the meantime. But today I just want to show you what I eat on a day-to-day basis, how much it costs, how I go about getting the food, how I cook it, and those kinds of things. Just briefly, if you're new to this channel, this is a place where I share the research into ME-CFS and long COVID in accessible ways so that you can be better empowered into understanding these kinds of illnesses, and it's a place where I share treatment strategies that I am using in order to improve my condition, such as the carnivore diet. So if that sounds good to you, please do like and subscribe. Now, I've been a carnivore for around 3.5 months, and although I initially started out, and I enjoy still from time to time, eating lamb chops and salmon, I quickly found that it is ground beef that I most gravitated towards. I found it most satisfying, most satiating, somehow most enjoyable. I also like the fact that with ground beef it's much easier and quicker to eat because it's already been, as it were, cut up for you. However, I didn't so much enjoy the ground beef that you would just buy in the supermarket, and there's a few reasons for that. First of all, you don't really know the quality of that mince, but more importantly is that the fat content is simply not high enough. So when you go into the supermarket, you'll see beef mince available at 5% fat, 15% fat, but the maximum you'll probably see, at least in my experience, is about 20% fat. And that just doesn't quite cut it for me. And what I found when I was eating that kind of mince is that I didn't feel I was getting enough energy. I would feel kind of more brain foggy, like I was craving calories. And there's also a problem with it because when you have the mince all cut up and the fat is interspersed through the mince, when you're cutting it, that fat melts very quick, and so it goes off the meat. Now, of course, if you don't throw that fat away and you still eat everything you've cooked, you'll still get the fat, but you may not actually end up eating all of the melted fat either. That might end up kind of staying behind. So I just felt I wasn't getting enough calories. So what I did is I went to a butcher, and in fact I had to go to several different butchers, and I asked them, look, will you please make me mince with a much higher fat ratio? And I actually asked for 40% fat. And the place where I was staying at that time, a town called Rodez in south central France, I had to go around several butchers before I found someone who was happy to do this, because they would all look at me as if I was, completely nuts. And they didn't detect the obvious financial benefit of having someone like myself coming in every week asking for, 7 kilograms of mince. So eventually I found a butcher who was super professional and also liked the idea of increasing his bank account with a customer such as myself, and who was happy to prepare mince in that way for me. So what I did was, every 3 or 4 days I went in to pick up around 3 to 3.5 kilograms of this fresh mince with a large amount of fat mixed through it. And you can see in this picture what that kind of looks like. Now, for me as a carnivore, there's something that goes on in your brain when you eat this way, that you start to crave meat and fat, unlike you'd ever crave any other kind of food. I mean, you'd never feel this way about broccoli, for example, but there's something, when I look at mince like that, I am just absolute craving it, desiring it, salivating about it. I just want it. So once I got this kind of situation set up, I really felt much happier. I felt much more satiated. I didn't feel like I wasn't getting enough energy. I felt it was perfect. And for me, this is the way I want to go about it. So on a daily basis, what do I eat? Well, I typically eat somewhere between 800 grams and 1 kilogram of beef mince prepared in this particularly fatty way. I cook that mince in butter with the lid on so that I'm also steaming the mince. And I usually add between 4 to 6 eggs, although it could be 8 or 10 depending on how I'm feeling, on top of the mince so that the eggs cook from the steam, and I want to get them with that nice kind of runny yolk consistency, which acts as a kind of eggy sauce over the mince. And that is essentially what I eat. So that's divided into 2 meals. So, each meal will be about 400 grams of mince to 500 grams of mince with 4 to 6 eggs. And I'll have that in the mid-morning. And then in the evening, I will do the same again. Now, sometimes in the evening meal, so I may leave out the eggs. If I'm not particularly hungry, I might just leave them out and just have the mince. I also have, maybe instead of the eggs, or sometimes in addition to, something that they have in pretty much every supermarket in France, which is a wonderful carnivore treat, rich kind of food, which is this thing here, foie de morue, which is cod liver. So not cod liver oil, but actual cod liver. And so you get this in any French supermarket. This costs about €1.80. That's about $2. And it's the actual liver of cods from Iceland. Little bit of salt is already added, not too much, and it's completely delicious. French compare it to as being similar to a kind of fishy foie gras, and it has that consistency, and I really, really like it. It's got full of good stuff. So I might add that on top of the mince in the evening meal, so it's kind of like a surf and turf sort of thing going on, and I'm getting in some organs. And that's basically it. On occasion I will maybe have salmon instead of mince, or lamb chops. Like if I've run out of the mince before I've got to go to the butcher, I'll usually pick up some salmon or lamb just for a meal. But that's basically what I eat. So let me just show you now what I'll be having now for my first meal in a little bit of time. So here we have the fatty mince on the left, about 400 to 500 grams, and on the right we have 6 eggs ready to go to be put on top of the meat when they're cooking. So what I normally do is I'll just I'll pop that mince, I'll melt some butter in this pan and cook the mince for about 7 minutes, and then at around that period of time I will add all of this on top of the mince, and then it will cook via the steam, and then at about the 10-minute mark I just take it off and I eat it directly from the pan, so that saves on washing up, and then everything, as I say, is cooked in butter. I add a bit of salt to the meal, not a huge amount, just about that much. I find if I have too much salt I don't do well with that, but if I have no salt at all, it doesn't do great at the moment either. So that's basically what I eat every day. I don't always finish the meals. Maybe there's a bit left over. In fact, there often is maybe 20% left over, which I then keep in the fridge so that I can have a meal eventually of accumulated leftovers. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And of course, full disclosure, as I said, I'm 95% carnivore and I'm 5% dark chocolate. So there's a particular brand of dark chocolate here in France that I can't quite imagine life without just yet. And I have 4 squares of that a day. Now that's not ideal, and I can imagine someone in the comments saying, you shouldn't be doing that. And of course they're right. It has oxalates, it has all kinds of defense chemicals. It's crap for you, and I don't feel great on it. But I'm actually coming from a situation where I was eating far more chocolate a few years ago, milk chocolate in huge quantities, actually binging on it. And this was an addiction, and at a certain point, because it was causing me so much harm, and I said to myself, you can have 4, maximum 5 squares of dark chocolate a day, and that's it. So I made a kind of what I call pact with the devil, as a way of kind of having a crutch that wasn't hurting me so much. So at the moment it's still an addictive relationship, even though it's 99% of the time I stick to that rule, but it's something that eventually I want to cut out. And I did try recently. I went 3 weeks without it, and then I woke up one morning basically feeling like life was meaningless without the chocolate, and I wasn't going to get out of bed unless I was going to go and buy some. Previously, in my first video, I also mentioned that I was eating cheese, both hard and fresh cheese. I have managed to cut out the cheese over the last 6 weeks. I have not had any cheese, so that was also a comfort eating food, so that is progress. I should also mention that I am not, zero carb. Obviously there's a little bit of sugar in the dark chocolate, not very much, but I do also drink every day 3 sachets of Normalite, which is an oral rehydration solution, extremely effective at boosting blood volume. And of course, low blood volume is a major problem in ME-CFS. So this has glucose in the sachet in order for it to work effectively to boost the blood volume. It's much more effective than if you were just taking salt on its own, miles more. And I feel, much better thanks to this. So this does mean that I'm having 21 grams a day of glucose from the Normalite. As that's not ideal either from the point of view of the Carnivore, but I haven't found it to be causing me any particular problem. I hope in the not so distant future to try and cut down the Normalite to 2 sachets a day, and obviously one day I don't want to have to take any of it, but for the moment it's very important treatment to improve my quality of life. You might also wonder, how much does this cost me? One of the other benefits about going for mince is that it is less expensive than, lamb chops or salmon or other kinds of cuts like ribeye steak and so on. And in fact, if your butcher is super honest, if they're making very fatty mince for you, that should cost even less than what mince might normally cost, because for them, they normally just chuck the fat away. So what do I end up spending on all of this? Well, for a kilogram ground beef done in this way, it's usually between 15 and 16.50 euro, so around $17-18 per kilogram. The eggs, for about 12 eggs, I spend €6. And so on a day-to-day basis, my diet probably costs me somewhere around €20, give or take €1 or €2 up or down, depending on how much I'm eating, which isn't that bad, really, considering that it is a meat-based diet, which is often thought of as being more expensive. And, I really enjoy this way of eating. I do miss certain foods sometimes, like different fruits, maybe like mangoes or papaya are very, very nice. I'm not saying I'm going to do this forever, but I do feel like it's given me a lot of benefits and I'm enjoying that, and I'm also looking forward to the day when I go completely carnivore and see how that does things for me. But I'm just going to keep on going with it. And perhaps in the future, in addition to kicking the chocolate habit at long last, I would maybe hope to add in some variety of organs. I've got the cod liver, but maybe chicken livers or some duck hearts, which are also very common in France. There's a lot of organs that are available easily in France. Maybe a bit of brain, why not? Bone marrow, those kinds of things would be good to include. But for now, I'm happy with how it's going. And I hope that you found this video helpful. Let me know if you're a carnivore. How do you go about your diet? And share your tips